What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're new and the thumbs up button if you were returning. Happy Monday. Welcome. What a weekend it was. Wow. This is some major things happening in the old crypto space. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the major price action, kind of the overall market price action, talk a lot of news. I mean, I think there was probably more potential topics today than I've seen in a long time. So I'm going to get to a handful of them. Obviously, there's a million more things I could have talked about, which hopefully we'll get to the rest of the week. But overall, very bullish behavior in the market. We're approaching an interesting moment, as we've been talking about, which is what we'll discuss. And then on the macro side, we're seeing some real developments that are what I call building the foundation of the market, which is very, very good. Overall, long term, it's a very good sign. All right, so happy Monday. Hope you're all having a great day. Just incidentally, I was walking to work today, man. It is a great feeling to be stoked about what it is you do. I know this has nothing to do with crypto, and obviously this, it's easy to say this when things are going up. So when things are going down, it's a little different. But man, it is so critical to be excited about what it is you're doing. Like, it just makes all the difference. Anyway, back to what really matters is helping everyone make lots of profits, even though none of this is professional advice, as you guys well know. Let's look at Bitcoin. All right. So for anyone listening, we're just looking at Bitcoin. I have two lines drawn. Now, I removed that first, kind of long-term trend line because in the short term, as of right now, it's not as relevant. It doesn't matter nearly as much as these other trend lines, which I think are going to drive some of the more relevant support levels. So the first one we're drawing from July 14th low on Bitcoin. I'm looking at Bitcoin dollar on Bitfinex. That's right around, we call it 3,000. And then the next trend line is the one in February, which is right around 6,000. And as you can see, this is coming right through where we are today, right? And so two things of note. One, this is obviously a very important trend line because you can see on March 29th, there's this huge daily drop candle, which means that it broke through that support, geared back up, and then on the flip side, we had a huge daily candle that broke back through it. So it's obvious that is providing a lot of juice, which bodes well over the next couple of days, hopefully to get us over 9,000. So I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic, as you well know. And as you can see on this, I drew this kind of, what do you call it, rectangle as a resistance zone. And so this is really where you're going to see a lot of the action. So if we go into the 1 hour, anyone listening, this is basically, let's call it 89.50. You could probably take that up to 9,000 based on the way the wicks worked out, and then all the way down to 85.90, 8,600, which is really where this resistance zone was. So anywhere in this square is going to represent a lot of chop, a lot of resistance, and that's exactly what we're seeing. So hopefully we're getting a little bit of a squeeze. You can see how this is kind of ascending volume right here, at least on the hourly chart, meaning that it almost looks like there's a triangle moving up. You're getting a lot of this support from this broad yellow resistance line, which we just showed from the the trends. The red line is not really as relevant right now because we just broke through that. It may be if we break through down here and we come back and retest this. But hopefully, if things continue the way they're going, if the momentum stays where it is, and the sentiment stays where it is, people are fired up, money keeps pouring in, we hopefully will break through this rectangle. We'll have a huge breakout. It'll come back down. It'll bounce off of this rectangle and then off of like the 9,000 level, and then we'll shoot up. And there's a lot of runway up here. potentially up to 11.6 or even higher, maybe even 12,000 area. We'll obviously see some resistance zones within here, but this is such a big area that if we get through here, it's going to be good. I am, like I said, cautiously optimistic. I think that this support is going to, really hold up the price. I think the market sentiment's really good. And just the way that this thing continues to ramp and test the top is a good sign. And it would actually be more concerning if it broke out early because there's so much resistance on this level. One little thing, if you guys don't do this already, especially if you're not a technical person, a really good clue, especially on the shorter time frames, is you can see how each of these candles has a wick, right? And so the longer the wick, that means that the price extended and then it got pushed back down, or on the bottom, the price dipped way down and then got pushed back up. And when you zoom in on some of the shorter time frames, you can, especially when you start to look at this a lot, you can start to get a sense on whether or not is the pressure coming from buyers, meaning is there a lot of longer wicks on the bottom, or is the pressure coming from sellers, which means there's a lot of resistance, which is when you see a lot of big wicks on the top. And that can give you a kind of loose idea of what the order books are looking like. It's called reading the tape. It's one way of reading the tape, kind of watching the price. But that's something that I do a fair amount of because that's how my brain processes what's going on with the live markets. Is I'm able to read this. You can almost feel the sentiment happening in real time. And then you balance that out with the 9 other factors that you have. But just something, if you ever want to learn more about that, that's a good tip that can help you. It's by no means is it a real science, because someone walks in, drops a $25 million bid, that changes a lot. So, but it can help you do that. Now, let's look at Ethereum real quick. We've been watching Ethereum. Ethereum has been leading the pack, and the same story for the most part. We looked at this trend line, which obviously it broke through end of last week, and then I drew another trend line starting from June of last year, which was one of the local highs. This chart is a little whack because of this flash crash in Coinbase, but then I drew on the log scale over to right around the 475 level in November-ish, I guess late November, early December. We saw this major resistance. This was kind of the next high that Ethereum saw that got major resistance before it started to run. So this is an interesting trend line to me, and as you can see, that this is also showing a pretty interesting level over on the side here. And then from a resistance zone, we're kind of seeing the same thing. This resistance, this box is not drawn all the way down to 616 because you really want to, I'm just lining it up with the bottom of this wick, which inevitably shows previous resistance and support levels back in the chart somewhere. That's why this is pretty skinny. So we're going to watch Ethereum enter. So if you go 1-to-1, which is, I'm not saying this is apples to apples. In this particular analysis, you could make the case that Bitcoin is actually leading the charge for the entire market. Meaning if Bitcoin breaks out, we'll get a very good sentiment of what the next month may look like. Whereas Ethereum is kind of lagging on an indicator of what the future looks like. You see what I'm saying? So let me say that again. Last week, Ethereum was showing us first that we were on the right path to this resistance level. So it was leading the charge up to 9,000-ish, right, that area. It was leading Bitcoin. But now Bitcoin is there, and because of the way the chart is structured, we are watching Bitcoin to see what the next month would look like, right? So that's why you take a look at, really the top coins, Ethereum, Bitcoin, to a certain extent Litecoin. Certain coins lead it at different times to give us a sense of what time frame we're at, where the future looks. So I'm going to be watching Bitcoin mostly this week. Ethereum and Litecoin still obviously will follow suit, but I think Bitcoin is going to be the best indicator for the coming months. So what we really want to happen, what we're looking for, is for this to break out really through 9,000, get some really good surging volume through it, coming back down, and then the key is it has to hold support on this resistance level. This has to turn into support so that we start moving up over the course of, let's say, 2 or 3 days, maybe even less than, maybe 1 or 2 days. that's a very, very, very bullish signal, especially if we get up through 9,200, even to this next level, this next zone of, let's say, 92 to 94. That's when it gets really exciting. So that's where we're at. That's what I'm really gunning for. But as you know, everything is a game of probabilities. And so let's look at the market cap. We are right at 400 billion. That's crazy, right? Seems like 2 weeks ago we were at like 280 or whatever a couple weeks ago. Let's flip it over to Bitcoin. And the big story for the altcoin market, in my opinion, is when does the money run out? And I think that we need, maybe this seems obvious to some people, we need Bitcoin to really crush these levels for the altcoins to continue to have their run, because it's going to keep the sentiment high. It's going to get the hype level, and that's going to trickle out into getting new people, which will then sustain the whole market itself. I think altcoins, you're starting to see a lot of what we saw last year, both in May and in November, December, which is everybody's a genius, right? Everybody can just say, oh, go buy this, and it goes up. And whenever you start to see that, it's obviously very exciting, and it's a good sign that you should at least buy something, right? Everyone do your own research, make sure you have your own portfolio strategy. But typically in situations like this, it's going to last longer than it expects, especially if Bitcoin blasts through that level. But it does seem that this is happening way faster than it did in previous times. Not necessarily in growth cycles, just in the sense of urgency of people being like, I have to make sure that I can't miss this one. So coins are pumping more easily than they might otherwise. Decisions are being made faster and more aggressively than they would otherwise, without the kind of greater juice coming in of new people being like, oh, I've never done this before. This is so exciting, which is what we had last year. This is more people that have done it before, and now they're recouping their assets. That's a very different mindset and a very different buying behavior structure than people that are doing it for the first time. And that's really, really important to keep in mind, because I think that the brain does not handle pain well. If all season was extremely profitable, but then it caused you a lot of pain because you rode it all the way down and you end up losing a lot of money because the altcoins you either bought on the way up or bought at the top, it's very hard to have the same mindset going into a new alt season. So keep that in mind. That's why I'm probably more apprehensive about these alt seasons than I have been in the past, and that you'll see on people on Twitter. You can go on Twitter and find people all day that will show you coins that could easily pump. And obviously I'll tell you guys any coins that I'm interested in or I think are good, but I am a little apprehensive because I just don't see the new people coming in yet. And you need those new buyers to come in because they haven't been burned yet. And I don't say that in a negative way. I just say that like that's how buying behavior works with things like this. So I think my thesis continues to stand on these coins. Buy things with liquidity, right? Buy things that have a great product, a great team, things like that. And I would also encourage you not to buy into things that are being shilled on Twitter. Learn about things that are being shilled on Twitter or wherever you get them. Wait for the price to come back to a good level, and then buy, assuming you still believe in the product. FOMO is a really good way to lose all your money over the long term. You may make some short term, but you will lose it long term. I can almost promise you that. Now let's talk about some interesting stuff. I think that there's some really cool news. The first, probably the biggest, Amazon, AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, if you don't know, they're coming out with what's called a blockchain as a service, BaaS or BaaS. If you don't know much about the evolution of tech, Mark Benioff, San Francisco guy, he kind of pioneered the idea of SaaS, which was software as a service. And what that means is that you sell a piece of software that people can use to either build their company or supplement their company or whatever it may be. We use these all the time now. How many pieces of software do we use on a daily basis? And blockchain as a service is really the next big evolution of that. It's going to be a massive industry. And Amazon Web Services is trying to do this. And they're obviously doing it through their database arm, because you need storage. Like you need to house your code somewhere. You need servers and all that. Now, the interesting macro play of this would be some people, I think the initial reaction is, all right, well, what are they offering? They're offering Ethereum blockchains that use Hyperledger, the Hyperledger Fabric, which is IBM, not necessarily related to Stellar Lumens, which is a common misconception. Stellar Lumens is integrated with IBM's version, but it's not part of the kind of the Linux style open source code. So that's not necessarily a direct play. The macro view of this would be, okay, well, if this model works, it's not necessarily Ethereum that's going to win. It may, but this is going to be the spearheading of the platform that facilitates blockchain as a service. So let me explain what I mean by that. Last week, we talked, or 2 weeks ago, we talked about the next big altcoin run is when we see verticals where one player comes in and they make something that's either highly utilitarian, has a lot of value, or it makes money. Usually those are one and the same. If Amazon is successful doing this, a macro analysis would be, well, let's go invest in the 10 companies that could disrupt Amazon in this way. And obviously going against Amazon is an incredible, that's a very, very ambitious plan, especially AWS, because this is probably one of their only profitable arms of the company other than Amazon Prime. But you could make a case for something like decentralized storage, right? Siacoin is one. Filecoin was a huge ICO out here. There's a lot of VC people who are really interested in Filecoin. That's an interesting way to hedge this sort of bet. You don't necessarily want to try to capitalize on what Amazon is doing. You don't necessarily want to say, oh, this is going to be great for Ethereum. It could be, but the big play would be, is this creating a new category so that you can go and then invest in a proven business case, which would then be storage in some capacity, no pun intended, that would facilitate blockchain as a service. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's how this kind of news, you connect that into a macro perspective. That's how you can make a hedge. That's how you can get early on potentially 100, 200, 300x returns. And then, as always, you can just bet on Amazon, which is typically a pretty good bet. But historically speaking, it is. So we're going to see how this plays out. I'm really excited to watch this play out and to see what's built on top of this. I'm really excited to see how people enjoy this, what people don't like about this, how this integrates into Amazon's core business, because AWS is really almost a separate business within Amazon. But this is going to be really interesting and a lot of development. So one thing you can do this week is go through CoinMarketCap and find as many coins that are doing distributed storage as you can find. I know that obviously Siacoin is one, Filecoin, it's not public yet, but they're doing one. RLC, right? IX Lab, they're doing one, I believe. Maybe that's distributed computing power. That's more like Golem, but you can, there's a lot there, and you can go through and see which ones you like and potentially make a play on that. Okay, now let's look at, where did that article go? The article I was trying to find was that there is a new trading desk on Goldman Sachs, and I don't know why it went away. Let me pull this article up as I just talk about it. Goldman Sachs crypto trading desk with my blazing fast Brave browser, which you guys should go get because it's a great way to support the community. Coinmastery.com/brave. Go check it out. And so Goldman Sachs is starting a crypto trading desk. I'm trying to pause this. Here we go. If you don't know what that means, if you walk into a hedge fund, or in this case, a bank, an investment bank, there are groups of people that are all trading at any given moment. And they come up with their own trading ideas. They execute on those trades, and hopefully those trades are very profitable. And in this day and age, there's really not a lot of like executing of orders per se, right? It's not like what most retail investors do, where you have your exchange up and you're buying the actual prices of things like that. Trading desks are more about creating the trade ideas, getting them approved by, the team or whoever's running the trading desk, and then having those being executed through your software. And so someone's got to manage the trading desk, which basically approves all the long and short calls and everything you're doing, futures in many cases. And then you've got the actual traders who are doing the research, who are looking at the markets, who are making the decisions or presenting the decisions. And so it's really, this is nothing new. This is what a lot of banks are doing. And what's interesting is that the trading desks are really getting the squeeze because of algorithmic trading, both high frequency stuff, but also just, the amount of work that an individual needs to do is slowly shrinking. So that's why the ideas and the hedges are becoming more valuable in these desks. Crypto offers a whole new set of potential profitability because it is less competitive than, say, the equities markets or the bonds markets or the currency markets, which is what these guys typically trade in, derivatives and all that. All right, so this is a really interesting play because setting up a formal trading desk does legitimize it, both for the bank and everything, but it's also like, if this becomes very profitable, they're going to allocate more resources to it. That's how any business would do. So the first thing is, this is exciting. You're going to see more of these trading desks come up. The second thing is that you are going to start to see them talking about how successful it was. Now, they're not necessarily going to come out and show you what they did or everything like that, but when they put out their 10K report at the end of the year, every quarter, whatever, their earnings report as SEC requirements, you can see what their balance sheet and their P&Ls look like. And there will be analysts, and especially in the earnings calls, they will talk about what drove a lot of revenue, because that's what shareholders care about. So this gets us new insight into the activities, into what whales are doing. So that's the thing you really want to pay attention to is, what does the next quarter look like? How much insight do we get on the relative success of this trading desk as they compare it to every other trading desk that they're running right now across all the other markets? Because that's going to dictate how the big money comes in. If it is the most profitable, that's very exciting stuff. Okay. I thought this was super interesting. I'm not going to harp on this too long. Via is a mining company, mining pool, whatever you want to call it. I believe they're Chinese, and they have some ties to Bitmain and also loosely to Bitcoin Cash. I believe they were one of the first mining pools for Bitcoin Cash. A lot of rumors going around, early last year, mid last year, about collusion with Bitmain and all that sort of thing. But anyway, I think it's really interesting. They are starting to put out new, marketing materials about becoming an EOS masternode. So if you don't know, EOS did the airdrop. They're moving their blockchain over to a native blockchain and all that sort of thing, so they can really go mainnet, and like their ICO is ending. And Via, the mining pool, is making a bid to control a percentage of the blockchain. Like they want to contribute to hash power on the blockchain. It's super interesting that this is happening because, one, I think it legitimizes EOS more than I personally expected. I didn't think it would happen this quickly. And obviously, I'm not going to get into the mining of it, but EOS is mined very differently than something like Bitcoin, right? It's DPoS. It's different than like traditional mining with like ASICs and all that sort of thing. So that's the first piece. But it legitimizes it. It also shows these guys, based on their track record, they try to go after emerging coins and corner those markets, or at least control those markets before they get too big. I think they try to do it with Bitcoin Cash. They obviously did it with Bitcoin, a little bit with Ethereum, but they tend to be very early in making big bets, and they're making a huge bet. Same way Bitfinex is doing EOS Finex. They're doing an entire exchange with EOS. So to me, as a what do I do next about it? I'm going to give another look at EOS personally. I don't know if I'm going to buy it at these prices quite yet. I think what happens with Bitcoin is really up in the air, but I do think that EOS has a lot of potential. I also think that it has a lot of regulatory risk because it was one of the big, if not the biggest ICO ever. That's a pretty big target. So, you got to weigh your options on that. But the fact that these mining pools are doing it, OK Coin also came out and said that they're trying to raise money through their venture capital arm, $100 million US, to basically, not control, to stake a part of the blockchain. So keep an eye on that. I think EOS is going to be a really interesting story this year. I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but I do think that there's going to be a lot of action around EOS for one way or another. Kraken. If you didn't read this, I would encourage you to read this. This was written by Jesse Powell, I believe, is the CEO of, I just want to make sure I got this. Jesse Powell, yeah, the CEO of Kraken. They're a San Francisco-based company. Met some of these guys, great people. They, if you remember, the New York State Attorney General issued a affidavit. Is that right? Whatever. To all the exchanges and asked them, hey, we need all this information about XYZ. And Kraken publicly refused. And so we don't know what the legal ramifications of this are going to be, but what he did put out is this, it's almost like a mission statement, like Jerry Maguire style. Here's what we're all about. Here's why we did it. Here's what we stand for. Here's what we believe in. And more importantly, like, here's what this whole movement is all about. And it's really good. I think that it's what I like about it a lot is that it's very smart. It's clearly written with a legal undertone, but it's written by a real person who really believes in what he's doing and what his company is doing. And you don't find that very often when the regulators come calling and there's a lot on the line. That's really when you see people's true colors. And I think that this is it's just inspiring in a lot of ways, because I think that without this sort of pushback, the crypto market can easily just become another equity market. And that's not to say that that's a bad thing. It's just that if it loses the revolutionary spirit, will inevitably just get whittled down into being the same corporate BS that you're seeing in other places. You're already seeing that happen with some of the bigger companies in this space. And, that on some level it has to happen, but I think it is just, it's inspiring and cool to see what these guys are doing. And I want to make sure that these guys get a lot of shout outs. I'm definitely going to try to use Kraken as much as I can to support them in the meantime, but go check it out. It's a good read. Similarly, which I don't have the article up, Giancarlo, the chairman of the CFTC, he retweeted an article. He just gave a speech at Vanderbilt, which is his alma mater. That's a college in the United States. And he talked about how crypto is actually really it's a proxy for something much, much bigger going on. And we've talked about this on this channel. I think from day one, Coin Mastery has had the thesis that crypto is this is a social revolution, way more than it's a financial one. It's a financial one right now, right? It's make money, supply and demand, finance, tech, all the stuff we talk about. But the underlying is the social, right? And that, like, the desire for change and for something new. I think that's driving this whole world way more than, because it's hard to measure that, right? So and that's why I think getting refreshers by like this Kraken article are so important. Now, second to last but not least, talked about some potentially bullish news. I think it's always important to balance this out with potentially bearish news, because you can't make money with blinders on, or you can, but then you lose money with blinders on too, which you don't want to do that. Gary Gensler is, or was, I should say, I think he was in FinCEN, but he was a financial regulator. He was in politics, and he is getting into the financial regulation space as, with his, call it specialty, or, I'm blanking on the words here. But anyway, the crux of this article is that he basically is saying that Ripple and Ethereum may have violated securities laws. Bitcoin's probably in the clear, but there's a very, very, very clear case to be made for a lot of coins. Ripple, Ethereum may be some of those guilty parties. And, obviously there's a lot of money, there's a lot of lobbying, there's a lot of people that are very powerful that want Ethereum and Ripple to be shut down. A lot of very wealthy, profitable lobby people want to flourish and innovate, like we talked about last week with the venture capitalists who had the meeting, But the point remains, this is still a huge conversation. No matter what this price does on Bitcoin, Ethereum, no matter what we see on a daily basis, there is still a lot of conversations happening about what the impact of this could be, right? Or like what they're even going to do. This is potentially considered a black swan event. And I think that this begs the question, which is something you always have to ask yourself as an investor: what is the worst case scenario in crypto right now? Like, what's the thing that could really just tank everything? And this is a potential thing, right? If they classify Ethereum and Ripple and whatever else, everything except Bitcoin for the most part, maybe Monero, everything else is like, a security, that could be a huge problem. So I don't know. I think it's always important to balance this stuff out. Speaking of balance, I thought this was hilarious. Was it yesterday? I put this tweet out because I think a question of, hey, do you think it's going to go up or down, is a little self-interested, right? It's a little biased. People tend to vote what they want to happen, not what they think is going to happen, which is the whole thing in itself. And so I tried to word this tweet where I said, if you knew the market was trying to screw you as much as possible, what would it do next? And it's 50-50. This top one, pump to 10K, is blue just because there's like one or two more votes. It's not because I voted for that. Similarly, dump to 7K got 50%. So it is an even split as of yesterday, which I think the price was right around 8,800 when I did this, give or take, maybe 8,700. And each people were like, man, if it ramped up to 10,000 tomorrow, I'd be screwed. As many people, man, if this dumped 7K, so there's just as many people, theoretically. I mean, who knows what the thought process is. But I do think this is the way you need to think about decisions. When you're looking at the market, one of the key things to consistently think about is how could this completely screw the most people possible, because that's what always happens. Given long enough time frame, the market will screw the most number of people, and it's just a matter of time for it to do that. And if that makes you uncomfortable, or if you don't like that, well, that's an unfortunate truth that you're gonna have to deal with. So think about it this way: it helps you make better decisions. And I can't stress this enough. We talked about this book, Trading the Zone, last week. When you feel like something is completely wrong, or it is going to things are about to go to zero and everything is screwed, that really is a good proxy of this is when it's a good time to be buying in. Even when you are convinced that something is the absolute end of the world, you learning how to separate yourself from when you should make decisions from those feelings is very, very effective. And it's something I've learned. It's something I work on all the time over the last couple of years, I should say, 2 years, but outside of crypto. But it's funny how that works, because when you think like that, you tend to beat the market as opposed to succumbing to the whims of the market. So good stuff, man. There's a lot going on, and I appreciate you guys hanging out. And we are going to sit and watch this Bitcoin price action and see what happens. And tomorrow, hopefully, we are in 9,000 land. Hopefully, we'll see what happens. But hope you guys have a great day. I will catch you later, and peace out.